Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode of the Nolecast. Bud, great to be able to catch up with you here on a Friday morning. Look forward to putting another episode in the books. Have a slight NFL draft review to do. Look ahead next year where the draft offering should be a little bit more robust. Have some interesting philosophical conversations about how to recruit in the age of NIL and the portal and whether or not kids are, how long you're going to have them on your roster. So look forward to jumping into this and whatever else we happen to come across in the course of conversation. But as always, we'll thank the good people at Louisiana Hot Sauce and the wonderful people that are on Bud's head. Currently, if you're watching the video, Tarpon Cellars Wine Company, tarponcellars.com, coupon code NOLECAST, 20% off, and a big thank you to our friends out in Napa Valley, as always.
Absolutely. Good to see you, buddy. And it sounds like we both got a little bit of the allergy stuff going on. This is no bueno, man.
Yeah, I got a little something, but comes and goes, and it's that time of year, and hopefully get out of Atlanta allergy season here in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so, but we'll see.
The pollen is real. Okay, so let's start with that NFL draft. Jamie Robinson, a guy that we enjoyed watching, former South Carolina player, transferred to Tallahassee and ends up getting drafted in the 5th round. I saw a little bit of people on Twitter telling us that he should have come back to school. I don't know. He's an older guy. I don't think he's getting bigger or faster. He doesn't need more reps or tape. I just think he kind of is what he is. And I'm happy that he went in the 5th round. 5th round, you get some guaranteed money. Yeah. And that's a good spot. But if you invest it, the downside is you got a really nice down payment on a house, right? The upside is you play in the league for, a contract or two.
So that just from a collective standpoint, I mean, we thought that Jamie would be probably somewhere in the area of 5th round pick, and had some interesting conversations with Jamie. And you're right. I mean, but I just turned 40, and I've been hoping that I would grow from 5'9" to maybe 5'11" for about 22 years now, and it hadn't happened. And I only bring that up because Jamie probably wasn't going to grow in his 5th year in college. I mean, and that's the real pro knock on him. So I don't know that there was more tape for him to put together. He certainly could have come back and, played another year. But when you're in a situation like that, man, you want to, what you just referenced is it. You want to start your clock and you want to try to get that second contract. That is everything in the pro game. If you're not going to be, if you're not like a Jared Verse type NFL prospect, but if you're going in there trying to make a team, trying to make a roster, trying to make a 53-man roster, and then trying to get that second contract, and ultimately an NFL pension's pretty great too. But no, Jamie made a very reasoned decision. He had an idea as to where he was going to go, and thought that if he tested exceptionally well, he might be a late 3rd round pick. But no, he went to a good place in the Panthers, and Jamie was a great dude, great influence on the program, and certainly wish him nothing but the best of luck.
And I think he will have a chance to stick on a roster because the way he plays the game, I think it lends itself to being a quality special teams player, which if you're drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, one of the things they tell you on those phone calls, and I've never had one, but we know this because they videotape them all for social media now, is, hey, man, we want you to come in here and be great. We know you're going to need to be a great special teamer for us, because they only carry 53 guys on the NFL roster. So important players play special teams, and the backups play you're a 2, 3, 4 phase special teamer. That's a pretty important thing, right? So, punt, kickoff return, punt return team, all that kind of stuff. He's not going to be on the field goal team, obviously. So, yeah, man, I'm happy for him. And that's one guy drafted, I think, speaks to just how much talent this team has coming back. You can think last year's team was, an elite team or a good team, but I think you're kind of crazy if you don't think it was at least a very good football team. And to have one guy drafted and a lot of guys coming back, it's not like you got a lot of guys that went undrafted. Those two stood out to me: Florida State and Washington. Washington won 11 ball games, and they had 0 players drafted. There you go. Getting the band back together, which is obviously I think a credit to the NIL opportunities that Battle's End can offer guys, right? They've established a big time marketing value during their time in Tallahassee, and like it's never higher than it is your final year, right?
Yeah.
Where the fan base loves you, they want to support you, and obviously like they want to support the businesses that are going to use you to market. So that's pretty cool, man. I know we also wanted to give a shout out to Robert Cooper for getting a look from the Seahawks. Just a guy we've enjoyed covering, man. I mean, shoot, when did he commit? Like 2015?
I think he committed at like the end of his sophomore year. So I could be wrong. It's been a long time, but I legitimately think that Robert Cooper was associated with Florida State football for like 9 years.
Yeah. He
Great
was
dude.
class of 2018. So like
Okay.
he probably committed like 15, dude.
Yeah, I think he committed. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I can just tell you from talking to some of his teammates, exceptionally respected, considered one of the best dudes on the team. And I had lunch with a defensive lineman teammate of his about a week ago, and he told me specifically, I think Cooper is going to go to the Seahawks, which is a pretty great sign to see that actually play out because it's indicative of a good fit for the system and a team that's made their evaluations on him, some medical evaluations on Cooper, and in this particular instance, and think that once he's back 100% could potentially be a contributor for him. So great dude, decent career. Didn't have the last year that he wanted because of injury, but great to see him land with a franchise that had a good idea as to if they could use him and if he could be a part of their scheme. So just something to keep an eye on.
Congrats to Rob, and I really, really hope he sticks. Just yeah, like you said, a really just enjoyable guy and an easy guy to root for sure. So we're rooting for you, man.
Flash forward to next year real quickly before we do, just how things could be different. I saw last night that, not that this matters, but Todd McShay has Jared Verse as the number 7 overall pick.
That's awesome.
That would be great, and that would be a reference as to there's different classes of guys when they evaluate NIL and whether or not to return for the draft. And Jared is a different class of dude. For a lot of these guys, NIL is great. Like if you're not positive, you're going to make an NFL roster, right? Because then you can come back, play, get a good NIL deal, and more or less you're going to be in the same situation next year. So if you go to that NFL team and don't make a roster, well, great. I've got 12 months of NIL money under my belt. Hopefully I've worked with a financial planner a little bit, just in a different launching point in life than you would have been otherwise. Versus different. Versus betting on himself. Probably would have been a mid-second round pick last year. And if that dude comes back and legitimately goes in the top 15 or top 10, then he made a exceptional decision. So obviously, mock drafts mean absolutely nothing at this point. But I do think that next year you could see, maybe 1 first-round pick and 5 picks by the middle of the 3rd round or something like that. I mean, it will be interesting to see what it looks like and how dramatically different the draft board looks from next year compared to this one.
So just to give you guys an idea of the reliability of mock drafts. See here. The mock drafts last year, the best one from May of last year, so it was like a year out, was actually Ryan Wilson, who works with me at CBS. We've had him on Cover 3, and you're really excited to have him back on this year. 4 of his 26, so obviously mocks 32 guys. 6 did not come out, so whatever. 4 of the dudes who he mocked who did come out went undrafted. So that's not a knock on Ryan. He actually that's the best mock anybody had in May of last year. Right. So I would completely caution people. Don't get worried if one of your favorite guys is not being mocked in the first round. There's still a legitimate chance he can rise up. If Jared Verse improves materially on his best and stays healthy to where his floor, like if his floor is what he played at last year, right, and his ceiling is somewhere above that, then I think he absolutely can be a top half of the first round guy because he is kind of a workout warrior. I do think he will test well, most likely. I'm interested in what he runs. I think like the lifting stuff will be really good. I think he'll be a pretty explosive jumper. And you're muted, it looks like.
Thank you, bud. Cone, jump, all that stuff. Jared will do great. I agree. I don't know that he's going to, rip off some transformational 40 time, but he'll do great. He'll do great. He'll interview exceptionally well. Jared's got a chance to go pretty high. It really does.
And I think your point as far as understanding your value and betting on yourself is a good one. I mean, it's like, I think the potential range for Lovett versus Jamie is an interesting conversation here, right? Whereas like Jamie, I think it was pretty well understood he was going to be somewhere between a 4th and a 6th round pick, right? With his size, I mean, sure, if he ripped off some testing number, but like I don't think he played at a speed that would suggest he would have a insane testing time, right? He probably ran a little bit worse than people thought he would, but still, like, Lovett to me, like the potential range was maybe bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if healthy, if interview goes great, if he tests like off the charts, maybe people take a swing at him early. But the problem is, like, the downside for Jamie was basically never undrafted. There was a floor of certainty there. Like the downside for Lovett is absolutely undrafted if he were to come out. So, like Verse, I think Lovett probably made the right call to come back because there's a lot more room he could move up a board as opposed to Jamie, who was basically what you see is what you get. Little notes, corrections, suggestions from last show. I think this one is on me. I had said that Pat Payton's a true sophomore. He's not. So, anyway, so he is draft eligible. That is from our chief editor, Chad.
Nice.
Of the legendary team, 844 FSU Loan, 844 FSU Loan. I know we had a couple more closings, so tremendous job there by those dudes. They always help us out, and I've used them twice, and I mean,
they're the best.
I think they're great.
Yeah, and then a lot of people talk about being passionate fans of things that care a lot about, and Chad and Shannon do it. Supported the Nolecast for 5-6 years now, however long it's been, and the results that we've had there are legitimately some of the better like partnerships in American podcast sport. I mean, it is exceptionally unique, and they have started to support the Battle's End with every home loan closed. I believe they're making a $250 donation, and I think they've announced 3 of those so far, with maybe another 6 or 7. It sounds like in the pipeline. So Shannon keeps doing his thing. Chad keeps being a ball of energy that does his thing and occasionally corrects us, and we couldn't have better sponsors. So thank you so much.
Also, he wanted to know why we didn't have Braden Fisk as a potential draftee listed, and I think he's right on that. Like, I think we should list him as a potential draftee. Like, we got to see what he is coming back from the shoulder. Was out for spring. Norvell announced that, and he'll be back by the fall. If all indications are. He could maybe be like a late round guy. The NFL always wants dudes who can get to the passer. I think he has the ability to be a penetrator. So maybe if he has a great year, he's a dude who could get drafted. I bring him up too. It's top of mind. I was going through some of my MAC power ratings for this fall. Got to get ready. It's what you do in May. And his numbers definitely pop. Do you know that Western Michigan lost 6 guys to Power 5 schools via transfer?
I think they lost. Didn't they lose both of their defensive tackles? Or I know they lost.
They
I know
lost both D tackles. Yeah. They lost Andre Carter to Minnesota. They lost a kid to Indiana. They lost a receiver to Minnesota. Minnesota treated them just like a farm system. All right, we'll take those 3. That's tough sledding, man.
Yeah,
but
that'll happen.
I think they did a pretty nice job in the portal via the FCS, which is to me a differentiator at that level. Like, you have to know people who can actually scout and look and say, like, this FCS kid can play here, this kid can't. So hopefully they won't be, bottom of the league. They are in the tougher division there. So the last time we potted was last Thursday morning, I think.
Believe so. Yeah.
Was Farmer back in then?
Farmer had come. The Farmer issue had resolved itself, which makes me think it might have been Friday morning.
Got it. Okay, right. So we had already talked about how, like, and we had talked about this on the podcast many times. The first year of this whole like spring portal, 2 window, full on thing, coaches were gonna have to make decisions on like if a guy hit the portal and wanted to come back, would you let him back? Blah 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 blah. I kind of think too, like the duration of time in the portal
Hmm.
matters.
Yeah.
Like if you hop in and then you hop back out, but but right. Whereas opposed to like a McClendon, obviously I think if he wanted to come back, Norvell would my guess would be telling him to kick rocks. So and then he ends up going to Colorado. Duke Cooper also to Colorado makes sense. His high school coach James Chaney is their director of player development there in Boulder now, and Brendan Gant to Colorado. I really just I think all those guys could do well, man. That's an opportunity for playing time that I don't know they were going to get as much of in Tallahassee, and God, like they're going to play a lot because
No, they're gonna play a
Colorado.
lot. They're gonna play a lot, and Duke is gonna be a starter at the position that he wants to play, rather than a backup at a position he doesn't want to play. I mean,
Right.
damn, dude, I don't blame you. I mean, that's what it is. It'd
Get
be
to be on a
interesting to
TV show, and like, that's
That's a whole different conversation, but yeah, no, it'll be really interesting, and I think a lot of the college football world will keep an eye on Colorado a little bit this year, just because it's going to be a fascinating experience. But no, bud, you're absolutely right, and that was the industry chatter before the window even was, and I had heard that from some other collectives in the SEC and some other places. The theme of it is going to be kids that jump in the portal and then realize they might not want to actually be in the portal. And you saw that happen a couple times at Florida State, and certainly the Farmer situation resolved itself well for everybody, I believe. And we'll just have to see how that plays out. I do think you're absolutely right that, and look, I'm not in a place to speak for anybody on the Florida State coaching staff, but I think you're right when you say that amount of time in the portal matters, and how you go about asking to come back, and maybe were you in that brief dalliance that you had with the portal, were you also actively going around trying to get other people to enter the portal with you and stuff like that. So I don't think any of those things happened with Josh, and ultimately he's back on the roster and a very young dynamic defensive tackle prospect. So be great to watch him develop in Tallahassee.
quick. Just kind of look around the portal here. Florida lost Antoine Powell Ryland to Virginia Tech. I think it's a pretty good get for the Hokies. FSU. When do they play La Tech this year? I think it's later, right? Let me look. I don't have. Do you have the schedule memorized yet? I kind of have a general feel for months.
I do think in Virginia Tech, like game
It's
7 or 8.
early October, so it's
Okay.
kind of just mid. All right, so that's kind of a loss for Florida. I thought he was a decent player for them, their edge rusher. Uh, Miami picked up a corner from Oklahoma in Jaden Davis, so I think he's a decent player. Like they need all the portal help they can get at corner. I was listening to the Through the Smoke podcast with David Lake, and they ran down each position, and corner was just the one that even with the guys they had already taken, were like, yeah, this is they need kind of all hands on deck help here if they want to have a special season and contend for the ACC and maybe win it for the first time ever. So we'll see how that goes there. Clemson still no activity, so curious. FSU, they've been linked via reports here to a couple things. One, Keon Coleman, the receiver that they recruited heavily out of high school, signed with Michigan State, had a nice freshman year. I know our Michigan State site had reported that he hit the portal because he did not want to play with the quarterback play that they had there at Michigan State because it was poor, and I agree. Interestingly, actually, Michigan State's quarterback, who may have been beaten out, by the way, hit the portal, and it looks like Auburn's going to take him. So I don't know what that says about Auburn's quarterback room, but
Damn. Okay. I
yeah,
didn't realize that. That's interesting.
yeah. So Coleman didn't want to play with this kid, according to reports. The kid hits the portal. Coleman hits the portal. Brantley, their corner at Michigan State, hit the portal, and then he jumped back in. So just like what we were talking about,
Hmm.
sometimes you're like, yeah, and like, wait a second, maybe what I have here is not that bad. And look, playing corner for Mel Tucker is certainly not a bad thing. Like the guy is coached in the NFL, coached for Kirby Smart, did a good job at Colorado for 1 year, has put guys into the league at corner at Michigan State, that type of thing. So the reports on Coleman universally have him considering schools that have guys who are locks to be drafted, in some cases locks to be drafted very highly at the quarterback position. North Carolina with Drake May, Florida State, Jordan Travis, Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma, LSU. I mean, if Daniels plays better, he's going to get drafted. And if not, they're going to play Nussmeier. Nussmeier is definitely going to get drafted someday. I'm fairly certain. I think Clemson I saw on there as well, maybe. But Coleman announced on his Twitter that he's taken an official visit to Tallahassee this weekend. I have been team take a receiver in the portal. And I feel like I've been on the damn island. And sometimes you're like, yeah, come visit, but on the receiver island, we bring him some water. He's a crazy person over here. But now, did Pittman announce Utah? Or was that just a crystal ball?
I think that's just the rumor to shore. I had a slip there on our last podcast. That was the early rumor, and I still think that's ultimately where it's thought he's going to go. But
I think Brendan Sinone of Noles 24/7 dropped a crystal ball. So
okay.
Yeah, I had somebody ask me the other day. They tweeted me an Instagram post of somebody saying that Noles 24/7 said something like, "Is this true?" I was like, "Just check Noles 24/7. Don't like why." Why are we like doing like third hand? Anyway, like, yes, this person who just completely stole their thing and posted it, it's probably true, but like it's they didn't do any work to get that. All right, so Coleman would be a big time get. We want some advanced stats on him. Let's do it. If FSU gets him, like I'm excited about Kentron. If you give me Coleman and Kentron, I feel very comfortable with where you are at the number 2 receiver position.
You gotta have some height out there.
Yes. 8.7 yards per target. He caught 88% of his catchable passes, which is good. Caught only 63% of his overall passes, which is low, but I think the differential there speaks to the quarterback play at Michigan State, right? Like that, he's not wrong to get out. 13.8 per catch, 2.1 yards per route run, which is good. Only a 3.3% drop rate, so that's fairly low. Almost all of his snaps came outside, and he was their most targeted player per route run, and that includes Jaden Reed, who was a 3rd-round pick in the NFL draft. So definitely a guy who was highly rated and playing to his rating already. Also, I imagine that he probably wants to go deep a little bit more. Just they threw him a lot of balls short, and that's my guess there. Also, the UAB safety Key has been like I think talking top schools, or it's been reported top schools. Pretty good player, man. Alabama, Florida State, a lot of big time guys that are trying to win titles are in there. Some people need some safety help via the portal.
Just visited Ole Miss.
Yep. I'm glad you brought up Ole Miss. I wanted to talk about this. I have seen reports, well, actually 2 reports that I'm just not on board with. Like, I know some places out there that have an interest in NIL being like the subject of every single story, are like Coleman is all about NIL, but I don't think so. Like Michigan State does not have a bad NIL program. Okay,
no, they don't.
Like they're really well bankrolled. The guy that does them, like, I mean, I know we have Chad and Shannon, and they are tremendous supporters. The guy that does them is basically like has a couple billion to his name, and like basically guaranteed the Tucker $90 million coaching contract.
The Quicken Loan guys, is he not?
No, it's not Quicken. It's okay. Oh, wait, I thought it was Rocket Mortgage.
Oh, all right. Well,
whatever. It was one of the 2. Yeah. It's like it's that kind of stuff. So I think it's very clear based on this kid's list that he like quarterback play is a consideration.
Yeah.
And I get it. If you're from Louisiana, you sign Michigan State, they have bad quarterback play, you have nothing really tying you to the school, blah, 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 blah. So I don't really feel like that's just a, hey, I'm hitting the portal, come to the highest bidder type situation, typically.
I mean, look,
Also,
NIL is important. Rarely is NIL the only thing, and when it is, you rarely do you want the kid.
yeah,
Just to speak as bluntly as possible.
it's a
NIL,
turnoff for coaches if the first question of a kid is, "How's the NIL opportunities
it
here?"
is
Right?
definitely, yeah, yeah. You got to have it. You can't win without it.
Yeah.
Need to have it in some manner. So I don't know.
You got to have culture, you got to have fit, you got to have
Yeah.
playing time opportunity, and all that stuff too
Yeah.
is important. The
You
other
don't
thing I
want to
want,
win because of it. You can't win without it. How about that?
it's a
That's
necessary but not sufficient condition.
there
If
you
you
go.
guys are doing SAT prep on a Friday morning, listen to us, then yeah. The other one I wanted to bring up, I I think somebody said that FSU was in on Tywone Malone, the defensive tackle who was also a baseball player at Ole Miss. He hit the portal. I I haven't heard that, so I'm not
Was
saying.
this kid originally from New Jersey? Is
Yes,
that
he
who
was a
I'm thinking
Jersey
of?
kid.
Okay.
Well, I think we actually had video of him on the pod hitting the crap out of a baseball.
Oh, that's good. Always fun.
Really, yeah. Like I have not heard that they're in on him, so I'm
Yeah.
not saying that report's wrong.
Yeah. Not that
I
I'm the
haven't heard
first
of
to
it.
hear anything. I haven't heard that name associated in the portal at
I
all.
would be like a little bit surprised after Farmer came back if they take another defensive tackle, personally. So like I don't think they're going to crowd that room anymore. Also, yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Like I'm not saying anybody's wrong or right. We got asked about it. I have not heard. I have not heard that yet.
Yeah. Interesting.
You want to do some? You want to do the recruiting v portal, recruiting in the age of the portal talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do, we'll thank Matt Lewis and his team at Congruity. CongruityHR.com is the website. Well into double figures as far as businesses that they've worked with. Matt is a fantastic dude, super passionate and all, and somebody that we would recommend without any reservation at all. CongruityHR.com is the website again. And as always, if you'd like to reach out to me on social media or email or whatever else, I will do my best to put you in touch with Chad. I'll put you in touch with Chad and Shannon too. But I'll put you in touch with Matt Lewis. And for whatever reason, a lot on the business end of things, people have felt a little bit more comfortable with a third party introduction. So,
Actually,
Congruity, big
uh,
thanks.
Matt, I got somebody coming to you today. This guy, Wyatt, actually, his wife runs a dental practice, and she's the dentist. He runs the practice,
Yes.
and in February he had like, hey, can you get me Matt's info and make the intro? It's like, yeah, Wyatt, yes sir, got you. What's your number or contact? And then yesterday he hit me back. I should probably check it. I should probably check IG more. So, uh, yeah, looks like another one coming, man.
There you go.
Very cool.
Fantastic.
All right,
Oh,
so we started to have discussion. We didn't have time to have both discussions last time, and it was like if you recruit a kid and he's not going to be a starter by the second year for you, basically, like, is it worth it? Shouldn't you just go portal at that point? Like, are you developing him just to get him plucked away by somebody else? And it kind of centered around the farmer thing, and I just kind of think FSU. I don't know. It's an involved discussion. I I think there's just some economic principles here in that retention is almost always going to be cheaper than acquisition in any business, right? We can pretend college football is not a business, but it basically is.
yeah. Yes.
You
Yes, it
also
is.
not only on just on a dollar for dollar cost, right? But you have an information advantage on the guys that you decide to keep or not compete for and let them hit the portal, as opposed to dudes who are in the portal. And I do think that FSU's hit rate in the portal has been awesome. And Derek Ray and all the staff that the boosters ponied up for Mike to be able to hire in the back offices have done a tremendous job of scouting. But not everybody they've taken has been a hit. Now, a lot of them have. And that's to their credit. It's been great. And they probably have one of the highest hit rates in the country if I had to just eyeball this thing. But you're still going to have so much more information about dudes who you have in your own locker room for 2, or 3 years, whether to make that call or really fight to keep that kid out of the portal if you're Mike Norvell. So, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I
it's
do, and I realize I'm twisting the argument a little bit, and for those who were of
no
that
twist.
opinion,
Let's
I'm
do it.
not trying to make it a straw man argument, but what is the proposition here that you're not going to develop your roster because you're afraid that they're going to leave in the portal? I mean, of course you have to do that. I think also, I think that in the moment, we can be prisoners of the moment and we can make extrapolations based off things. I wouldn't extrapolate anything off Josh Farmer. Okay. Josh Farmer is a different dude, who's, went through that process and ultimately decided to stay at Florida State. I would not make big extrapolations off of him and the process that he went through. Um, I think you're absolutely right in that you know more about these kids that you have on your roster by probably a hundred multiple of to what it is when you're going out looking at other kids. And you can have great contacts and you can get feedback on kids, but the kids that you're around 340 days a year, you're inherently going to know and have a better feel for. And so look at, we talked about Farmer. Look at AO. Are you not going to take somebody like AO who's,
Right. He's a
I mean,
developmental kid. He's
yeah,
not going to be ready to make a huge impact in year 2. Probably like he's more of a year 3 type guy.
but he's on that development track. I mean, dude, look, not that, hey, look, they're all D1 football players. Shockingly, they're, more physically developed than you or I are going to be. But AO's trending very positively. I'll put
Yeah.
it that way, and that's a guy that you got in the system. Interesting little recruitment of. But by year 3, dude, that guy has a chance to be a all conference type player, in my opinion, and will be fascinating to see what he looks like this year.
I think the genesis of this conversation was I was talking to Sinone about this on the Knowles 24/7 message board, and we actually ended up realizing we both basically agreed with each other, and we're just sort of like not understanding each other's points initially. I think, and so it was an enjoyable discussion, and it was like, do you want to recruit guys who are like pretty raw and developmental, right? I don't know that Farmer was. I don't know what he weighed when he showed up. I mean, he certainly Storms and company have done a nice job with him, training him up. But like when they started recruiting him in high school, he was like 250, which is not abnormal for D tackles as juniors. I mean, you get them to like 275, 280, and then they enroll, that type of thing. But my point was like, look, Farmer to this point, because at the time it looked like he was leaving. This is not a failure of the recruiting process, of recruiting approach, or developmental approach. He was leaving at the time because your defensive tackle room is absolutely stacked. Like, that's not a failure. You did a great job developing him, and you also did a tremendous job through the portal. And you had Lovett decide to come back because he was in large part, I think, if he had stayed healthy last year, he'd be gone. Right? He was dinged for most of the year. Like, that's not a foreseeable event that Lovett gets hurt and has to come back. That you would hit on both guys you took in the transfer portal at D tackle. So I think like the idea that you don't recruit high upside raw guys out of high school is an approach that I would use if I was a Sunbelt coach, because by the time they develop, somebody will pluck them from me in spite of my best efforts to keep them. Okay. Like look at UTSA with Zachary Franklin. They kept Frank Harris. Now they can't keep their receiver, who we got to make a mental note. That's the guy we bet on a lot last year for prize picks.
No,
So
man. I mean, I've told you, I have friends who coach in the some. This is the exact conversation they have with guys. I mean, it is. Whereas in the past, hey, look, maybe you get the linebacker. If he was an inch and a half taller, he'd be a Georgia, or if he was
right,
a second, tenth of a second faster, he'd be a Georgia Tech or something like that. Well, that's great. You can get him, but be aware that if you get him in the program and by sophomore year, looks like a guy that if he wasn't half an inch shorter or something would be playing D1 ball, he gonna be playing D1 ball. I mean, they've had to totally reevaluate how they go about through the recruiting process, how long they think they're going to have guys on campus, and those flyers that they take. They realize with anybody, when you take a flyer, there's a lot of high ceiling, low floor frequently, but they know if it hits that they may only have 1 year with them, and otherwise it's going to go SEC, ACC, whatever.
To the point where, like, I think if you're at a P5 major, which obviously FSU is, and there's probably, I don't know, 20 of them,
Yeah.
25 maybe. I'm recruiting almost exclusively for upside, with the knowledge that I can generally go get average player in the ACC level via the portal if I need to fill a hole, right? Like that, especially with the track record that the Noles have had through the portal. I know, like, I can go pluck this guy and say, "Hey, you can start for us. You're going to be a useful player for us. Look at our portal track record." I'm going to, like, high school, I really just want the guys who, if they hit, are at a level I can't go get in the portal.
Yeah.
You
You've
know?
used this term on Cover 3 in the Nolecast before. Elite traits. That's what
Yeah.
you're looking for. You're looking for high school kids who have look, we've talked a lot about Farmer. Pat Payton. I mean, look at that. They found a long, rangy guy, has the year that ACC rookie defensive player of the year last year, has a chance to have a breakout year this year. Wouldn't shock me if Pat Payton's not a some team All-American before he leaves Tallahassee. He
Yeah.
has developed exceptionally well, and is another kind of reference point as to what they use when selling other kids. But Pat had some nice traits, but Pat wasn't like a, um, a sure thing as a recruit by any means. But you just got somebody that's lanky, and has pretty decent explosiveness to pair with all that. And 2 years later, he turned him into a hell of a player.
I mean, was there a Jared Verse in the portal this year?
No, there wasn't.
This is what I'm saying. Like, there's not necessarily like there's not a Pat Payton level player in the portal this year. I don't think, unless you like the kid from Coastal that Michigan took. And I'm a little. I don't think, like, I mean, Edmond so far does not look to have the same upside that a Pat Payton does. Right now, maybe he will develop into that, and I think he's a good college football player with some developmental upside. I think 14 of the 15 tackles drafted were not transfers. The only one who was the kid who went from Tennessee to Oklahoma, and that was because Tennessee narked on their head coach to try to not pay the buyout. That's not a normal situation. So when I'm looking at high school recruiting, and this is the exact opposite of how I do it at the Sun Belt. This is the opposite of how I would do it at a Wake Forest or something. At those schools, I'm trying to find the guys who I know are going to be good college football players, but don't have the traits to where a Georgia or a USC would pluck them off my roster. At this level, I'm okay with a little bit higher bust rate out of high school and backfilling with competency through the portal. I'm trying to use high school to get what I can't get through the portal.
Yeah, good, quick little summary of it right there. I absolutely think that is what you'll continue to see more of. It's an interesting conversation. Obviously, we're all dealing with a somewhat limited sample size here, and trying to make the most of the information that's available, and what and how this is ultimately going to impact college ball. But it's it's really, I mean, it is what it is. It's here. It's not going anywhere. But it's interesting to see the the ripple effect that this has on coaches' decisions and how they go about the evaluation process.
Oh, the one thing I would add there, I think you also have to use high school for culture, right? Like, they have done a nice job assimilating transfers into their team, and in some ways, transfers like how am I blank? First round pick last year, Jets, Georgia. Why am I having a brain fart this morning?
Oh, Jermaine?
Yeah, excuse me.
Okay.
Like, in some ways, like those guys actually help to establish the culture, because you were working from scratch. But I do think, just like we talked about, you're going to know more about high school guys than you are about transfers coming in, culture-wise, for the most part, because you're going to get them on your campus multiple times. You're going to know them throughout the recruiting process. I do think you should use high school to set your culture too. So if you look at the commit list and you're like, all right, this guy's elite upside traits. This guy's elite upside traits. If he hits, he's definitely an NFL guy. If he hits, he's an NFL guy. This guy may just be a good college football player. I think you still take that guy if you think he's a really good culture guy too. You know, an important area for you. You know, the family has some money and they can drive other prospects up on visits, like things like that. That just this is how the sausage is made, right?
That's a good culture guy. Yeah.
No, it is.
Yeah, I get it.
You know,
Yeah,
like
no, you're absolutely
forever.
right.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
so I don't. Sometimes there are other reasons, and I also like I'll give the staff credit. There was I'm not going to name the kid because he's not involved in it, but there was a really talented kid last year that a lot of big time schools liked, and from Florida, and he went out of state, and they didn't offer him because there was some pretty sketch stuff going on around the kid. And I think they had real worries about bringing that into the locker room. And I talked to a guy about this last night who is not on the staff, but like he knows a lot of guys that have worked for Mike. And he's like, Mike is a pretty big stickler for culture as far as what he brings in to the locker room and what he doesn't allow.
Yeah.
So
they have I mean, I'm not giving away any industry secrets here, but they have a layer of cultural evaluation that starts with the head coach and works through position coach, etc. It's a big part of the process for them, and I completely agree with you that you want to build it through high school, and kind of set your culture with that, and then be selective in the portal. And so far, look, I don't know all the interactions in the locker room, but so far they've done incredibly well in the portal, and I wonder to an extent if that's sustainable. And that's not a knock on Mike or the staff or anything else. That's just statistically it's tough to continue to bring in, guys like Jared Verse and Jermaine Johnson, who are some of the better players on your team, and also
right.
some of the hardest working, best people. Right? That's a hell of a Venn diagram to find and live within. So you want to give yourself a little bit more leeway, and I agree with you that the high school kids, you have a little bit more certainty as to what you think their ultimate impact would be on your locker room.
Makes sense. Let's go ahead and talk here a little bit about where FSU is in these recent media polls.
Before we do, we need to talk about where you should be when you go to Tallahassee, and that's all the properties of For the Table Restaurant Group, particularly our friends at Charlie Park. We frequently say that, well, yeah, I'm not going to badmouth anybody. Charlie Park is Tallahassee's best rooftop bar. It's hands down, it's an exceptional place. With all respect to Tallahassee, I love it. Doesn't necessarily feel like you're in Tallahassee when you get up there. Great place, great views, great cocktails. If you're somebody like myself and loves scotch and enjoys bourbon, you can walk in there real quickly and tell that you're at a bar that takes themselves seriously based off of some of the things that they stock and what's available. So always love Mad. So Township is turned into like the spot for the kids, but it's crazy. Whenever I walk by Township, it's like 80 line deep of 20-year-olds trying to get in there and hang out. Good for them. And all the offerings For the Table Restaurant Group. Matt Thompson and his team have been great supporters of the Nolecast, and we thank them so much. And as always, charlieparkrooftopbar.com, and reservations are recommended for their brunch, and it's a great place.
They were waiting in the rain to get in after the spring game. I was watching, like, Matt, you got something going here, man.
You gotta cook. It must be the
people
pretzel.
Wait in the rain to eat the pretzel.
Those college kids love those pretzels. They are great, I have to say.
They are good. All right, so I found 4 new polls. I didn't see one from Sports Illustrated, but I got one from The Athletic, ESPN, CBS, 24/7 Sports, and I also rounded up where they had FSU's opponents in it. I'm noticing some trends here. So Stu Mandel at The Athletic had FSU 9th, said they've assembled the most talented roster in years. Then at quarterback, he names all the guys. Doesn't seem to have any factual errors as far as who had good preseasons or spring seasons and whatnot. Does list? Oh, I found one. He does have Akeem Dent returning as a top 50. Oh, sorry, never mind. I thought he said he was a top 15 safety. And I was like, that's a little great. But he said top 15 defense. So that's on me. No errors there. Coveted transfer Braden Fisk should have a big impact. So 9th, I feel like is a pretty good ranking. It gets better though. Schleybaugh is like all in, man. Have you seen this?
I haven't. Schleyball's an interesting to third. Okay. Wow.
Third.
I think that's the most of what I've seen lives kind of between 4 and 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, third. Okay. Nice. Love it.
I think it's the first I've seen of third.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was mostly seeing, like 4 and 8. You know, I think that's very fair. Post spring outlook. Florida State believes quarterback Jordan Travis is a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate, which I do too if they go 12-0 and he puts up big numbers. Like, why would he not be? And Coach Martin Ravel added a couple of key pieces to give him more options this season. He lists off Jaheim Bell and Morlock. They're big upgrades at tight end. Completely agree. Like, we don't talk about that every show, but I think this tight end room is so much better than it was, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Receiver Kentron Portier seems ready to break out. And freshman Andrevius Jacobs is another budding star on the perimeter. Fisk, already talked about. Pat Payton, they perform well in the spring. That's not, well, Fisk did not, obviously, because he didn't play. Pat Payton, yes, he did. Should be a big defensive line that already includes star pass rusher Jared Verse. So I don't know. I like to include their comments because I want to see if these guys actually know what they're talking about. But third is aggressive. That's a hell of a jump.
Hell of a jump. Be interesting to see, kind of to bring the conversation full circle. If Florida State adds 2 or 3 really meaningful pieces in the portal, then I think I'll be all there. I mean, you are fairly close, in my opinion. Now, we can have the conversation. I don't think there's anything in the portal that you can do to make you Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, right? Just too many years of exceptionally high school recruiting.
If you're going to catch Bama, you need Bama to come to you a little bit too. Like you need them to have messed up on the coordinator hire and to really just not have a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah. Interesting they took the Notre Dame kid.
Especially after Tommy Rees recruited Sam Hartman for 6 weeks.
Well, yes, that you said it. I didn't. That was that was all the talk in the back channels of the transfer portal. What was going to happen at that position, and then to see the other Notre Dame quarterback was quite interesting. So
that was wild. Dennis Dodd, 7th. Go ahead and say it. FSU is somewhere close to back. 10-win season, first since 2016. Travis Heisman candidate. Solid offensive line. D-line impact guys. Verse, love it. Clemson struggling. The Seminoles are more than the trendy pick to win the ACC. And he's moved them up from 14th in January to 7th now, which I'm assuming is transfer portal. I do like that he included where he had him, last in January. And then 24/7 Sports, FSU 5th. The word May, not only has Florida State cleaned up in the portal for the recruiting cycle, but they're also one of the nation's hottest teams exiting season. Got great news with Jordan Travis, along with top defender Verse coming back. Gives FSU a pair of All-American candidates on both sides of the football, not to mention impressive talent elsewhere at the skill spots. One of the nation's most hyped teams in 2023 and our number 5 slot exiting in our poll. So moving on up, man. People are taking notice of what's happening in the portal and a quality spring.
Yeah. I think it's portal. I think it's statistics like Bill Connolly's. What do they have? 80, 83, 87, whatever the percentage is of production returning. There's just some things that jump out at you and let you know that this has the opportunity to be a uniquely talented team. And it's pretty freaking great to be able to say after the last 3 or 4 years of podcasting that we've done. Yeah. So I do 100%. Get about a text a day, bud, from just random friends and stuff being like, damn, I sure do enjoy the Nolecast a hell of a lot more right now than maybe 4 years ago.
And the numbers show it too.
I'm like, yeah, funny how that works. That works.
Right, like we're not like, hey, let's rank the top 10 crappiest things that have happened to the program this week, right? Like it's
what drastic self-inflicted error did we slap on ourselves in the last 7 days? No, man, it's great to be able to support a football program that's heading in the right direction. So,
all right. So here's where they have the opponents. The Athletic has LSU 2 and Clemson 16.
Okay. Wow.
So I actually heard Mandel talk about this on I think it's called the Audible that he does with Feldman, and Feldman was kind of getting into him a little bit about like why he didn't have Clemson higher, and he just said basically, I think everybody else is continually improving their roster via the portal, and Clemson is just standing still, which is a pretty good point. Like, I was of the mindset last year that Clemson was clearly a better team than the Noles were, right? And people were like, "Oh, it was a single score game at the end." I was like, "It was, yeah," and like that's a fair point to make. But how much better did Clemson's roster get? Now, I think they did keep some guys from going pro, which is helpful to them, and they made a really important coordinator change.
Yeah.
Like if FSU had gone out and got a top flight defensive coordinator, let's not pretend like we wouldn't be hyping the crap out of that here. So, and I'm not saying Fuller won't be a good D coordinator. I mean, the pressure's on this year, like on.
TCU's guy's a proven commodity.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's a guy that's going to be if he has the same success at Clemson that he had at TCU, he's going to be like a head coach of a top 25 type program. That's why you take that job as opposed to taking I don't know, like a Colorado. So think about it, Clemson did not really add anybody of importance in the transfer portal. FSU went out and got better at multiple spots, and they needed to. So that's I think it's something we kind of forget. Like, yeah, Clemson recruits really well, and they develop most positions very well. They also don't seem to address their shortcomings via the portal very much. So LSU 2, Mandel basically said, like, we know Nussmeier is very good. Daniels clearly is getting better, and to hold him off is pretty impressive. And they're elite on both lines of scrimmage, and they're really damn good. 2, I feel like is aggressive, man. Like I feel like I was the high guy on LSU, and got people riled up because I said on cover 3, like why do we think Alabama's better than them? 2 is aggressive. I don't know. Like they're certainly a team that could win the national title. FSU's a team that could, if everything breaks right, win the national title. 2 feels high to me. ESPN 7th for LSU, 9th for Clemson. So Schleybaugh is the highest on Dabo still. CBS 8th for LSU, Clemson 10th, and 24/7 LSU 4, Clemson 10.
Okay.
Do you notice another theme there, dude? No other opponents in the top 25?
Yeah, I was wondering. I don't know who it would be, but yeah, I was wondering if there was somebody else that was going to show up on there.
What I'm noticing here is like FSU has a lot of teams that like I'm ranking somewhere between like 26 and like 45. So people are going to say this is a 2-game schedule. I don't think it is. I think it's like a 5 or 6 game schedule. Now you'll be favored in 4 of those 6 for sure. Right now, you're a small underdog against LSU in Orlando. Last I saw was 2 points there. I mean, that line implies a coin flip and like a field goal dog at Clemson. If I had to bet one of those right now, I think I'd rather take the +3 going in the Death Valley than the +2 on the neutral.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think that. I mean, Clemson, they've been the class of the ACC for a long damn time. To beat them, you have to go up and beat them and potentially beat them twice. I think the best team on your schedule is LSU, and I don't know that it's particularly close.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I guess Pitt, if I had to think about like what's the 3rd toughest game in your schedule? It's at Pitt, right? Unless Florida really comes together, like it's either Pitt, Florida. I guess because the talent, Miami.
Yeah, if Miami makes a couple good, they could be 3rd or 4th on that list. But
did you see they might have 5 first-round picks according to Life Wallet Sports?
Yeah, I was actually chuckling about that comment last night.
I wonder how shareholders feel about the new media division.
Oh, yeah, stocks trading in the 50s, and when I say that, I mean cents. And we're out here making projections on players that perhaps the same companies spent a lot of money on to bring in that Despite
it's a
tweets and other
record?
things, ROI may not in fact be involved. But yeah,
It's got to be a record to go 5-7 and then the next year have 5 first-round picks,
that
right?
would be incredible.
Like, there's
Yes.
no way that anybody's ever come close. I
We'll
I
get
don't
a maybe that's the U-Port 3 is,
Billy
uh,
Corbin is on it.
yes.
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
always enjoy it, man.
Yeah, no
Been
doubt.
another great one. We do slide back into every 7 days, every 10 days or so here in the slow points of the off season, but in some ways, these end up being some of my favorite podcasts to do because you can just have flexibility. You don't have to, make sure you review the play of the tackles or whatever else. And very, very enjoyable conversation this morning. So thank you as always, my man. We'll have this out to our listeners here and would expect another podcast from us either into next week or first of the week following. So until then, if you could like us, subscribe, do all the silly things that help promote a podcast. YouTube is only continuing to grow in importance. So if you want to go over there and slap a like on the button or subscribe to the channel, know that it's greatly appreciated. And this has been another episode of the Nolecast.